A time comes in the life of every race when people are driven by echoes of the past to chart a course for an exalted future. Africa is at this threshold, as major actors in the Africa arena plot a renaissance towards common destiny. Let's pedal across the streams of yesterday, from the backstreets of Africa to the defining roles of policymakers, the political realities of the African nation, balance of power, and the strive to sustain national interest and identity. Join us on Network Africa on Channels Television. Network Africa, a rallying point for the emergence of a new Africa.
On Network Africa this week, Nigeria turns 54 and it's a very big deal.
Every promise I make, God willing, I'll see to its fulfillment, I assure you.
Then the fight against Ebola continues and there might be a potential vaccine by the beginning of next year.
What we're doing now is working with clinicians, with regulators, with both companies to accelerate the clinical trials of these vaccines.
Also, the illegal migration death toll is so high that Amnesty International says the EU must put up resources for Mediterranean migrant rescues.
And I think that's really our point today, is to draw attention to the enormous inhumanity that's taking place, and that we need to galvanise international opinion around this and try and help amplify the voices of those who have lost loved ones, so that others don't take this foolhardy mistake, foolhardy step, and walk into the hands of smugglers who have nothing but cynicism in their hearts.
And there's also pressure from the UNHCR, which says more international resolve is needed to stop conflict in Africa. Hello and welcome to the first episode of Network Africa in the month of October with me, Cynthia Are. Now, Nigeria marked 54 years since it gained independence from the British, and in order to celebrate, the President, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, addressed the nation, and his focus was on collective efforts to tackle insurgency.
I urge every Nigerian to put aside political, sectional, or other parochial considerations and support wholeheartedly the efforts of the government and the military in checking this evil. We are grateful to the international community and especially our neighbors who are working closely with us in confronting this challenge for their increased partnership and solidarity. Our steady progress in weakening the insurgency has certainly justified our cooperation, have made the commitment that we will act on the recommendations of the conference. This I have started by setting up the ministerial committee headed by the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation to work out the modalities for implementing the report. Every promise I make, God willing, I'll see to its fulfillment. I assure you, we shall implement the report. We must remain vigilant to ensure that our electoral process is characterized by peace, security, and transparency, and join the Independent National Electoral Commission, all security agencies, politicians, and the electorate to work conscientiously and peacefully together to consolidate on the gains of the recent elections. Free and fair elections have come to stay. Nothing else will be acceptable to our people.
Now to health matters. There have been many calls for the international community to step up its efforts in helping control the spread of the Ebola virus in the affected African countries, and there have been relatively good responses. For instance, the United States has announced that it plans to quickly increase its presence in Liberia.
Washington is sending some 3,000 soldiers to the region to build treatment centers and train local medics. Around half will be based in Liberia, with the rest providing logistical support outside the country.
As our military forces continue to flow in, we'll continue to work together so that we complement each other's abilities and efforts to support the government of Liberia. We'll also be partnering with the armed forces of Liberia, and they are eager to help their fellow countrymen. Our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines will work side by side with our Liberian hosts and build on our already special relationship.
Williams said the U.S. mission was planning to build and supply 17 Ebola treatment units across the country, but added that Liberian authorities would still be leading the effort.
But the AFL has a great ability to get out. They're already out, and they are doing these surveys with us and helping us because they have the knowledge of the local areas. So we are not doing anything solely by ourselves.
After a slow initial response, foreign governments and international organizations are now pouring funds, supplies, and personnel into West Africa. U.S. President Barack Obama on Thursday called on more nations to help fight the outbreak, saying hundreds of thousands of lives were at stake. Britain, France, China, and Cuba have all pledged military and civilian personnel alongside cash and medical supplies. Speaking of China, China's medical aid unit in Sierra Leone has confirmed that 17 out of the 24 samples they have tested for the Ebola virus were positive. The samples from suspected Ebola patients were provided by Sierra Leone's Ministry of Health and Sanitation. The Chinese mobile unit stationed at the Sierra Leone China Friendship Hospital in Freetown is designed to conduct tests at what is known as P3 or Biosafety Level 3, a measure of the lab's ability to handle hazardous samples. According to doctors, Ebola samples would normally require Level 4, the highest level of biosafety. Liberia is said to have recorded 1,830 deaths, around 3 times as many as Guinea or Sierra Leone, the 2 other heavily affected countries. On its part, the U.S. Embassy plans to build a 25-bed unit to treat infected health workers and Liberians, which had begun in Magrivi country in central Liberia. Construction is due to be completed in a few weeks.
Now, still talking health, the World Health Organization, that's WHO, said it expects to begin small-scale use of 2 experimental Ebola vaccines in West Africa early next year. And in the meantime, transfusions of survivors' blood may offer the best hope of treatment.
Ebola has no cure and is said to have killed people infected in West Africa since an outbreak began in March. GlaxoSmithKline has begun clinical trials of its vaccine in the United States and Britain, to be followed by a trial starting in Mali this week, while new link vaccine trials are about to start in the United States and Germany, and that's according to Dr. Mari Polikeni, a WHO Assistant Director General.
We are working at WHO with many partners to try to accelerate 3 types of products. One are drugs, medicine. The other one are blood-derived products, either whole blood or plasma. And the third one is on vaccines. So on drugs, we have had some work with experts to look at which are the products which are the nearest to having proven some utility potentially for Ebola, and we are focusing on these.
She stressed, however, that the shots were experimental and had not yet been shown to work against Ebola. Kinney hopes the WHO will have initial results on both of these potential vaccines by the end of the year, and that if everything goes well, vaccines should be available for limited groups of people, including medical staff, at the beginning of next year.
In terms of vaccines, there are several candidates, but we are focusing in WHO mainly on 2. One which is based on what is called chimpanzee adenovirus, which is a recombinant virus vector. This is developed by the company GSK. The other one is based on another virus, which is called VSV, and it's developed by a company in the US called New Link. It's this second vaccine, which has been donated by the Canadian government at the level of 800 vials to WHO. And what we're doing now is working with clinicians, with regulators, with both companies to accelerate the clinical trials of these vaccines.
Data will be collected from clinical trials when the experimental vaccines are being given to healthy volunteers who are then monitored for adverse side effects and to see if the shot elicits an immune response in their blood. There are currently no vaccines or medicines approved by national regulatory authorities to tackle Ebola, except for the purpose of compassionate care.
WHO has released guidelines for the safe use of whole blood transfusion to treat Ebola patients, and we are working with many partners to help put in the affected countries material that would allow this country to do plasmapheresis in order to extract plasma from recovered patients, convalescent patients, in order to be able to prepare then serum and to treat further patients in the country. So this is also something which is moving ahead quite readily.
WHO said that discussions are also beginning with countries infected by Ebola to see which areas will be the most suitable to test any new drugs and to establish as soon as possible which drugs give patients the best chance of survival.